Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome along to our latest Monday.com user group for today, Wednesday, 15th, I think is March. Thanks for coming again, appreciate it. As always, we will send the recording afterwards, so if you've got colleagues who weren't able to attend live this morning, we will send the recording to everybody. It takes probably tomorrow morning before that goes out, but just so you know. So just introduce the team that we've got here today. So my name's Martin from Providence CRM. And along with my colleague Ralph, and we'd like to welcome back Lee as well. We'll be going through some of the different aspects of Monday.com today, showing you some of the new features, some tips and tricks that we found along the way that work well to solve your problems or your limitations that you've come across with Monday. And as always, welcome any questions, anything you want to add. You can add that either in the chat, in the Q&A, or towards the end we have the open question and answer. Just open up your mic and ask us questions there as well. Very welcome any of those if we can help at all. Just quickly, in terms of what we're doing today, sort of our agenda, very brief, 30 minutes, try not to take up too much of your time, but try and get through as much as possible we can during that time. So we're going to run through a couple of different aspects today. We're going to start off with Ralph, who's going to talk to us some more about workdocs and show us some better features of that and how we can use it more in depth. Lee is going to take us through a particular solution he's found for a client around limitations there are with dependencies. And then we've got a couple more bits, questions that we'll address towards the end. And as I said, if you've got additional questions you'd like us to cover, please add them in the Q&A or in the chat, or open your mic, and we're happy to take live questions as well. We'll do our best to try and answer them. So just, I guess I'm going to hand over to you. No, sorry, Ralph first. And Ralph is going to show us some features of workdocs and how they can be used. So over to you, Ralph.
Thanks, Martin, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I see a couple of familiar faces that seem to come back every month. If it's glutton for punishment, I don't know, but it's always appreciated to see you. So I'm just going to run through workdocs and how in the year that workdocs has been around, how it has expanded and grown and is now so customizable and so helpful with everything that it can kind of do for people. So I'm just going to share my screen. And so hopefully you can all see my page that says induction. And what this is, the point of this is really to show how forms can be used and the information that those forms can give, how it can be collated and how it can be then used in kind of analysis. So really what we do at Provident, when people come on board with us, after about a week or so, we want to kind of find out how they're enjoying their induction experience and making sure that they're happy, that they're getting the kind of answers that they want. And with Workforms, we've been able to bring in conditional questions. So to give an example, this is, was I given a warm welcome when you joined Providence CRM? Hopefully everybody would say yes. If not, we want to know why not. So if somebody was to tick no, this conditional question would then pop up to them, and they would basically be able to answer that question with what was going on. And what that allows us to be able to do is take that information, feed that back to HR, and they can basically improve the onboarding experience as it's going. The customizing of forms, I think most people at this stage are pretty familiar with how things can be customized in terms of just their backgrounds, logos, everything like that. But what I wanted to really show was not only how things can be published now, not just from putting it in just as a standard form or a shortened URL, but how it can be imported into social media and how that can be embedded into your website. So if you imagine that you want to have some information continually collated and continually updated, you can do so. So what have we got here? We've had a couple of answers in from people that have come on board with us, and we can see what the induction response has been like, which is great because we know, okay, we're at a 3.5 in terms of how staff are being onboarded. We need to improve on that. Also, that information can now be automated. So when a form is submitted, notify all the team members via numerous different channels, Slack, Gmail, Outlook, Monday, whatever it may be. But importantly, we can now take this information and import it into a Monday board. And that Monday board can be live. So here we have a workdoc. So we're just going to basically start with the basic elements of it, the induction survey, induction plan review, today's date, and who are the attendees of this meeting. So in this case, we're going to pop a couple of people down. We'll pop myself down, We can pop Martin down. We can pop Gary down. And so what we're able to do is analyze and assess new staff's onboarding experience, how that's going along. But we want to be able to see what that actual information looks like. So we can do it one of two ways. We can either add the content this way or a simple /. And the simple / starts to fill in these boxes and how we can fill them in. So you can literally grow that work form live, how it's assessing all that information. And importantly, we can import the board that we saw from the work form directly into our work doc. So we have it here. We have this work doc that we want to bring in. Now, subject to everything going well, excellent. It did work. There's always that nervous element with live demos that it's not going to work the way you want it to. But this information is imported directly from work forms. So as that information grows and as it's being produced and information is being updated, all this information is live. So I'm going to try and do this live on demo because I'm feeling ambitious this morning. Letitia, if you're on, can you just fill in another doc that I gave you the link for yesterday? Real quick, doesn't need to be anything going too detailed, and we'll see if this works. If it doesn't work, then I'm just going to blame technology and we'll all be happy that technology doesn't work from time to time. But I want to basically show how that information is updated as we're going through that meeting. So
the idea here, Ralph, is that you've got, so this is your kind of meeting notes. You've got your attendees of your meetings,
yep.
And then you're seeing your live data then right here in your meeting.
There we go.
Action notes, effectively. Yeah. Okay.
And then we're able to see that was updated as we're talking. We've improved to a 3.6. But from our meetings point of view, we can see that all of that information was updated. And it can be editable. We can change that around as we want. And going on to that, we can then decide, okay, do we need to have more information, less information? Do we want to kind of get further feedback on how that's going along? So really, it's about being able to make not just a work doc usable, but make it really interactive. I know when people sometimes might use Microsoft Forms, they get the form and they get the information. That's all really great. But then they've got to import it into Excel. Then they've got to create pivot tables. All of that work is involved. And let's be honest, it can be really frustrating if you're not really handy with pivot tables. Monday makes this so accessible, so easy. And from my perspective, looking at it, I love being able to kind of do this kind of thing when it actually works really well and you're able to take that information and update it live. So that's just a brief overview of how work docs and work forms are really improving and growing as we're going along. And it's going to have a lot more to go as we get along. So back to you, Martin.
Yeah, great, Ralph. Really interesting to see. I wasn't aware of all that, so that's great to see. So learning for everybody, I think, in this. So cool. I like the conditional questions that you can do in the work forms as well. I think that's quite powerful in terms of depending upon people's answers, you can decide what happens next and so on. So that's cool. Lee, I think we're going to hand over to you. Then you're going to run through a particular solution around dependencies that we were talking about the other day. Yeah. You're on mute there still, Lee.
That hasn't happened in a while.
There we
go. Okay. Yeah, so thanks, Martin. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we had a prospect that was speaking to myself and Martin, and they had a very simple workflow. And they were really talking about the dependencies within their particular flow. And it came up with there was a bit of a challenge, really, what they wanted to do. And then we sort of had a look at it, and there was a limitation in there. But we don't want limitations. We want to try and break these barriers down. Now, just to explain the customer. So as you can see from the screen here, we have a very simple view of the workflow they have. It's a top-down workflow, which it could be called waterfall. It could be called horizontal or vertical, workflow. But it's effectively what they wanted was every one of the tasks they have on their boards within their projects needed to be done consecutively, and they wanted to be able to stop other tasks lower down on the list from being done before its predecessor or its dependent task has been completed. Now, Monday doesn't actually have a fixed way of stopping people updating items. You can use roles, you can use things like that and permissions to set who can edit and who can modify things. You can, to an extent, use dependencies or automations within dependencies to set things and notify somebody that when something is ready or when this task is completed, then I can notify, for instance, Martin that that next task is completed. But they had a very strict flow, and that's the challenge that we had to come across. Now, as you can see from the board in here, we've got just 5 tasks. We've got 5 tasks. We've got the people who are assigned them, and then if I just come across one page, 2 seconds. And I've just expanded the board out just to show the dependencies in here. And I just want to sort of recap everybody, or for those of you who haven't seen dependencies within Monday, just what they can do naturally. And then we'll look at the solution and what we've actually made it do in order to break that limitation. So the dependencies column is just a column that you can add to any Monday board. And effectively what it does is it allows us to link an item. So this second item, I could link it to the first one to make it dependent on it. Now this uses things like the dates naturally. So when we set up a dependency, we can basically say that if the date changes of the first item, then we can make those same changes to all of the other items that are dependent on it. And that's kind of naturally what the dependency field is all about. It's more of if you to think about the Gantt chart or a calendar, when I move a date of a task, if that's moved to a week to the left or to the right, then actually all of the other tasks should probably move a week to the left to the right as well. So there's automations for that. There is also automations that allow us to modify statuses, but nothing that stops us from modifying a status. So let's just take a look at the actual dependency automations. Again, just a bit more of a deep dive. The first one here, this dependency automation, this is a status automation. So when a status changes to something that could be done or finished or completed, then change the status of its dependency to something. Okay, so if we have an item and then we have another item that's dependent on it, if I mark the top item as done, as you can see from this video here, if I mark that top item as done, then the automation kicks in, and then the next one is ready to go, for instance. And then we can keep doing that all the way through. But again, there's nothing stopping me from marking that status as done. It's kind of waterfall. Yes, I can do it. Yes, it's done. The next one's ready to go. On top of that, we could give notifications to the people that are assigned those items to say, actually, Martin has now done his task. Lee, it's your task next. You can go. But again, it's not really fixing that problem or issue that we have. Just to show you the other automations that we have in here, or just one of them, in case you've never seen them. The second one here is just adjusting the date of an item to reflect changes made on the date of its dependency. So what does that mean? Well, really, if I just change a date of something, maybe move it a day or two or a week or two, all of the other items that have dates on there, they will also move a week or two to the left or to the right or whatever we have. So we've got these 2 types of dependency automations. There are a couple of other ones mainly to do with the dates, but that's still not fixing this customer's query. So this is how we did it, and it was actually simpler than we initially thought. There are ways of actually taking workflows like this and actually doing the work outside of the system. You may have heard of integration tools like Make or Zapier, etc. Basically, when there's a trigger, it goes out to these other programs. It does all the hard, heavy lifting, and then it can bring it back in. We're not going to want to do that in this case. The client didn't want to use a third-party tool. It's not always an option for everybody. We must be able to do this within Monday. So the board I've got in here in front of you right now is a kind of again a mock-up of that customer's board. So I've got 5 different tasks. Each task is assigned to a person, and then I've got status columns. So this first status column is the standard one that we're all used to. We can see working on it, if it's stuck, if it's done. But I've added another status in here, and this one says dependent item not done. And I've also got another one to say this one is next. So we can use these 2 going through it. Not too worried about the date in this example, but we've got the dates set, and they were set by a dependency automation to make sure that each date was set the day after, or the working day after the next the previous item. And then here is my dependency column. So we can see that this item here is dependent on the first item, this item here on the second, and so on and so on. So if you've never seen the dependency column, it's just a way of linking up items to other items effectively on our boards. So I can just go and pick which one it is dependent on, or it could be a number. It could be 1 or 2, 3, 4. It doesn't have to be just one item. In the dependency item board settings, this is again just for a piece of information. There's nothing here that actually locks it to a status. Okay, so it's mainly to do with the date or timeline columns. You do have a kind of a nice option in here now to make it if it's a flexible date, which means I can just move the one item, as you can see in here. But if I try to push that item over the date of the second item, the whole thing, the whole timeline will move to the left or to the right. Okay, so that's a nice little feature that they've added into the system. So that's the flexible dependency mode, but we've also got the strict dependency mode. So that just moves. If I move one item, everything else will shift to the right or to the left. Okay. Again, that's not really where focusing on our status. So how did we do this? Well, we just used, I think it was 7 automations. So I added automations onto our boards, but I also introduced a new column. And this is a hidden column. So this is just for the purpose of doing all the work that I needed to do. Okay. Now this column itself has 3 statuses in there. It has done, it has ready, and it has the next task is ready. Okay, so these are my triggers. These are the things that I want my automations to evaluate as we work through this process. Okay, I'll show you the automations very briefly in a second, but let's just see it in action. Because the purpose of this is to stop items being done before its dependent item has been completed. We'll take the first task here, assigned to myself, and just go and mark that as done. 2 things have just happened in the background. First one, the parent status, if you didn't see it, we'll see it again shortly, but it changed to ready. So that is one automation that says when this is done, set this parent status to ready. Okay, I needed that automation to set this particular column for me. Another automation behind it basically states that if this item changes to ready, then using that automation for the status dependencies, set the status of the dependent item status to something. In this case, I've said next task is ready. Okay, so I've gone, this is done, this is ready, the next task is now ready. Okay, we'll just see that in action once more. So Candy, it's her turn. She's going to go and do her work. That is done. Now it's ready. Next task is now ready. Okay, that's a nice one just to work through the workflow. That example we didn't really need to do on this parent status column here. We could have just done that straight away in the status column. But again, I need this one here to be used for the evaluation to do what I'm going to do next. Now, Martin here, he's jumping the gun. He's got a very urgent meeting to do this afternoon. He wanted to get his task done before Ralph got his task done. So Martin is now going to go and mark his task as done. Something different has happened here. Another automation has looked at this parent status column. If this parent status column doesn't say next task ready, then it's reverted this status to say dependent item is not done. And it's also put a little notification in here so we can track it and see how many times Martin has tried to fix to sort his status. So we can use an automation here to update the status. We can send an alert to Martin. I can send an alert to Ralph. I can send an alert to everybody on the team or on the board or in the system. Okay, so we can put some red lights to say Martin's going a bit too fast for this whole process. So there's other things we could have done within this example, but that's kind of a nice visual indicator. It stopped me from marking that as done. If I go and click it again, the same thing is going to happen. It's going to revert back to dependent item not done, update the status, send off the red alerts. Okay, so these automations are evaluating this parent status column. If they're not ready, then we're going to stay in this loop until Ralph here has marked his item as done. When he marks his one as done, that goes ready. The next one goes next task ready, and Martin's task is now cleared down. He can now go ahead and do his task. Okay, so it's a kind of a workaround. It's a way of us using some extra fields within the system to evaluate another status, to say if it's done or if its parent item is done, then yes, you're ready to go. If not, then we're going to block it. We're going to send an alert. We're going to stop you moving down in that process. So what we've kind of created here internally using just 7 automations, 1 extra column, is a way of making the status column now more of a dependent column rather than just being the date or just alerting someone that they can go next. We can actually block them from completing their tasks. So yeah, if you want to know any more about that or look about the automations, then feel free to contact us. But and I do like challenges like this. So if you've got any more, it's a little hobby of mine is to make these little solutions. But yeah, feel free to reach out.
Great. Thanks, Lee. Really interesting to see that. Nice example of how we can do something, I guess, a little bit different. So cool. Thanks for that one. We've got a couple more things we're going to try and run through real quickly, and then we'll take some questions then as well. So I'm just going to share my screen, and I will show you one item which we came up about. So one of the items we said we'd cover today was about how you can create an item in a board from an email. So it's something you may not be aware of, but obviously when we have a board, and this is just an example here of a project board, I can create a new item by clicking on the blue new item button, and I can create an item from there. But also I can create an item via email. So if I go up here to the little 3 dots, famous little 3 dots, click on those 3 dots, go to board settings, and we've got an option here for create items via email. Click on that, and you'll see that every board has its own unique email address linked to the account. So in this case, it's my Provident EU hosted board. It's got an item number and some additional information in terms of what that email address is. So what I could do is I could copy this email address, share that with anyone I want. They can send an email to that address and it will create a new item here on the board. So it can be useful for adding, say, for external people who you want them to add or add an item onto a board. Additionally, what we can do is we can use a customized address to make it a little bit easier. So in this case, I've created a customized address, which is mug@providentiu.monday.com. So a little easier to remember, hopefully, than the one above. So what does that look like in terms of what we do? So we copy the email address from here. I go into my email then, and I create my email, send it to mug@providentiu.com. Here's my email, send that off, and that's going to create automatically within my board a new item. So you can see in there, we've got a group here, which is emailed items, and my new item then will pop into here any moment now and create a new item on the board for us. From there, then we can, obviously we can give it a status, we can assign it to people, we can kick off any workflow from there, but it's just an alternative way of creating new items in Monday other than directly within the board itself. I'm just going to refresh and see, does that come in? It should have come in instantly, but of course, being true to form live, it doesn't always happen. Yeah, there we go. So here's my email. It's automatically been given a status of future step. Ooh, where did it go? I'm not joking. It was there, and now it's disappeared, which is interesting. That is so strange.
I was definitely there. I saw it.
Yeah, I saw it. Hang on, there we go.
Yeah, the filter.
Filter was on there. Okay.
Always check your filters.
Yeah. So if you just to explain what happened there. So I had a default view, which is here, and this has a filter, and it's hiding certain columns from it. Whereas if we go to the main table, we can see the email item group. Here is my email. I can open that up, and I can see all the details of the email that I sent are in here already. So just an alternative way of capturing emails. We've got only a few minutes left, so I want to get on to some of the questions that we had already that people added when they registered. So one of them was around the dashboards and how we can see dashboards and reporting across projects. So just to give you an example of that, I'm here in a Monday projects workspace at the moment, and I have a management dashboard set up here. And this is connected to, in this case, 5 connected boards. So they're connected to specific project boards that I have down here. And this is showing me at a very high level some of the metrics, some of the KPIs, some of the items I want to measure around my overall projects. So I can see at a glance, I'm 34.5% done, and the various different stages of my different projects. I can get an idea here of the various items and what stage they're at. I can see a quick overview here in terms of the various different stages and when they're due to be completed, and other items that I want to do. So it's quite easy to construct a dashboard that can show us whatever metrics or KPIs we want to see and build that from here. And then once the board level is once the board is connected to here, then this is automatically updated live all the time. So as long as I keep my details up to date on my lower level board, it's going to automatically connect into here and update for us. So we've got our live dashboard here. It's showing everything, and we can see from that level. We can click into each of these and expand further and see the information behind them then as well. So not only is it showing me live information, but it's also giving me what's behind that information. So I've got my dashboard set up. I'm happy with it. I know what it's showing. I want to share this then regularly with the people who need to see it. So what I can do is I can say a couple of different ways that I can share it. So for example, I can export to PDF, one option, not the best, I'd suggest. One that I like is scheduling an email notification. So what I can do is I can say every week on Monday morning at 10 a.m, schedule an email and send it to whomever it needs to go to here. Click schedule email, and every Monday morning now at 10 a.m, it's going to email this dashboard to the people that need to see this dashboard, and they've got an instant view of the live updated view of where our project is, and they can look at that and interrogate it and dive into the data behind it then if they want to. Now let's have a look. We got some more questions then. I don't know, so I can't see the questions there at the moment. Lee or Ralph, maybe you could tell me what some of
Yeah, so I know Lee's kind of interacting there, but the question seems to be, when using a schedule view, you cannot fix each task or person with a color. The color changes every day. It'd be more helpful to know that Lee is always shown as red or Lisa is always shown as blue.
Okay, so in terms of color coding people against a task.
Yes.
So we're talking about the actual icon on the owners here that we're talking about.
Sorry, can I just come in? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, that's exactly. We put people and we have engineers assigned to projects. And when we look at it, if each of the engineers had their own colour, then it would be much easier to identify quickly that, like I say, Simon's always blue or Lee's always red. But every day and everybody's screen, it has a different colour. And the next day, Lee can be green one day and pink the next day. And so you're having to look every day to re-understand what your coding is. I have asked this question, and everyone's kind of almost as if it's a real surprise that that would be something that people would need.
So I do have an answer. Now, where you can see in the screen in here, where we've got MM for Martin, and then you've got Ralph, obviously, down below with his lovely picture in there. You could upload a picture against the user's profile and then have a specific color or background or something like that, rather than letting the Monday default, which obviously is changing color. I wasn't aware of that, so that's something I've learned. Every day is a school day. But if you were to upload under Martin's profile an icon, an image, or something specific, then that would be fixed. So it doesn't.
Sorry, but it doesn't. We all do have a picture, but it's still on the schedule. It assigns a color.
Okay. And the schedule.
So if you went for a schedule view.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So which view is it?
Like a calendar.
Okay. Yeah.
So the calendar picks up from the well, you can actually color by something. So let's go and have a look at that. Yeah. So if you go into the settings of this, please, Martin. Of the view.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Down a little bit to go into next to where it says month in the top.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yep. And the settings in here. So color by you've got in here. If you come down, so you can color by things like board, status, person. If we're doing it by owner and it's changing the colors, so I mean those ones there, I see what you mean now, that these ones are kind of fixed in that way. The only way I could think about maybe changing that and having it more fixed is using another status column and then saying if it's Lee, then make it pink status. If it's Martin, then make it a green status, and then actually colouring by that rather than using the image icons. That would work. So it's kind of a hidden sort of status column if you want, and you can use an automation to say if it's Lee, then make it pink. If it's Martin, then make it green. And then in that schedule, you could use that.
So on the so I'd look for an automation and say, and it would be when it's Lee, colour the calendar a colour. Is that how I do it?
Yeah. So yeah, Martin, if you just go and add another status column for me, just on the board in the main view. I mean, yeah, anyone will do. Just add another. And then you could call it, schedule color or something, and then say the top one in green is Martin.
Okay.
And so on. And then yes, and so effectively when an item is, and it may be a custom automation that you could create, but when owner is Lee, then change status 1 to green. When owner is Ralph. And then that's the view, the status view there. Status 1 is the one you would use in your calendar color by, and it'll always be fixed then, unless somebody changes the color.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll try that. That's great.
Great. Thanks for that, Lee. Okay, we got some more questions.
We do. There's one question in regarding, and I'm not sure who's asked it. It was submitted earlier on regarding Monday and Teams. I think we all kind of know that Monday has a direct integration with Teams, and it does an awful lot with it. But if whomever asked that question could expand on that question, that would be great. I don't know if I should badmouth Teams or not. It can be funny at the best of times. I think we all work with Microsoft products that can be a little bit finicky from time to time, but there's an example of the integrations that are available.
Yeah, there's two different ways that we can integrate between Monday and Teams. So within Monday itself, we can add the Microsoft Teams app, and then you can get notifications that go from Monday into a Teams chat or Teams channel. Equally, if you have Teams and you open the Teams app, you can add Monday in then as an app in Teams, so the other way around. And what that means then, you can actually open boards and interact with boards fully from within the Teams app. So there's both options there to connect the two. So I don't know who asked that question, if they're on the call at the moment, but there's two different options of how you can link both Monday and Teams together. So happy to expand on that further either today or another time if that would help.
The last question that I think we should take is one that I know I am working on for Rory, who's on the call at the moment, where we're trying to remove weekends from the tracker via automations. And it's something that we've gone kind of back and forward on in terms of excluding Saturdays and Sundays. So it's not having a detrimental effect when it's trying to run an automation. It's something probably they're going to need a little bit more info than that, Rory. But I don't know if you want to kind of just throw it in the question here while we're here.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thanks for bringing it up. So we have several projects. So we have a form, and we would have 150 projects per month. On average, just going up to 150, 200. But we started time tracking because we were tracking the terms of service. So if someone submits a form on a Thursday, if they say submit it on a Thursday evening, we review it Friday morning, and then we'll actually assign to someone Friday, and then Monday you could actually start working on it. But for the actual turnaround times, like it's a metric for what we use. So if someone submits a design and it's a certain tier, we have a certain turnaround time that we aim for. With that, we want to exclude weekends, because if something's submitted on a Friday evening at a certain time and we get to it on Monday and it's back by Tuesday, that means that design period has extended beyond what it should be, and that's what we're looking for. So Ralph, we have had a chat and we looked at, say, adjusting the working hours, and that didn't make any effect on the overall time tracking. Actually, do you want me to share my screen and show? Actually, I can't share my screen. It won't allow me for this one, but.
So I think there's an option there, Rory, potentially using a formula. So you might do a little bit of playing around, but we can calculate the number of days between two dates and exclude the weekends.
Okay.
So this is the formula here. So effectively, if you've got an SLA and you're saying there's X number of days between two dates, and that's when you need to deliver by, so you essentially need to insert this formula into that calculation so that you're excluding the weekends and not counting those in your SLA. Is that sort of what you're looking? Is that sort of on the right track?
I think that will, because if I use that formula in a second column, so I use like that formula in the second column, I can export that and that'll track. If that's, so we're tracking the hours of it. So does that work in the same instance for hours? So what I mean by that is, if we have a design that comes in on a Friday and we do it on a Monday, it's coming in at 24 hours times 4, which is, I'm not great at maths right now, around 90 hours. But in reality, it should be 12 hours or whatever it is when we mark it as done.
Yeah, so it might need a little bit of playing around with to get the exact between hours and days, but there's definitely a formula, or a couple of formulas we might need to put in place to do that. So we're not going to throw it all at the moment, but I think definitely there's an option there for how we can do that. So we can talk to you afterwards about that. Just Andrew, thanks for asking. Yeah, that board that I just shared there at the moment, that actually lists a load of formula columns that you can use within Monday, and I will try and share that.
I'm just about to paste it in, Martin.
Oh, I have it done here. Yeah, thanks.
All right, fair enough.
So I've just shared it there. So that's a public accessible board where you can see examples of many formulas that can be used across Monday. So there's loads of them in there. They're mostly very similar to Excel formulas, but I know there can be some slight differences. There's some really useful ones in there. So if you're into formulas, please knock yourself out and play around with that. Some great ones there. So Roy, we'll try and come up with a solution using some of those for you. So we can get.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're actually I think we're pretty much over time.
Yeah.
So unless anybody has any burning questions, which they would like to us to address real quickly, we'll probably finish up. We will of course send you the recording afterwards. We'll go out tomorrow morning. You can feel free to share that with any colleagues, family, friends, whoever would like to see it. Don't hesitate to get in touch with myself, Ralph, or Lee directly if there's anything we can help with, any questions you've got, any more in-depth use cases you'd like us to have a look at. More than happy to help. We will run this again next month, the third Wednesday of the month, and we'll try and address any new features or functions we found in the meantime, or equally if you have questions you would like us to look at, then please add those in when you register for the next one. Thanks again for coming, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks a million.